At the start of the movie, a photographer named Samuel is taking pictures on a small island off the west coast. Most of the people he takes shots of are sleeping in strange places, which we notice. It turns out that the island is in a strange kind of trouble. People started falling asleep out of nowhere 3 days ago, whether they were in a car, a pool, or even swimming underwater. At first, the people watching were just confused, but soon they realized that the people who slept didn't wake up, almost like they were in a sleep. In the last 72 hours, many doctors and experts have come to the island, but no one has found a cure for the unique pandemic. By now, everyone who lives on the island full-time has gone to sleep. The lucky ones are at home, some are at work, and the rest are at the food store or in their cars. Their body is working fine, but whenever they are moved from where they fell asleep, their heart rate goes to an abnormally high level. One interesting thing about the situation is that the event doesn't affect people who didn't live on the island permanently before it happened. So, experts set up a camp and put tags on all the people sleeping on the island so they can keep track of them. At the moment, no reporter is allowed in the sick zone, but Samuel managed to sneak through the border while everything was going crazy. During the trip, he gets on a bus where everyone is sleeping so he can take pictures. He finds a woman with a live goldfish in her hand and chooses to take it with him. In this strange situation, Samuel thinks the fish is his only friend, so he talks to it that way. Later, they get to a house that looks nice enough to stay in for a few days. Samuel walks in carefully and sees a woman sleeping on her bed. Stella was one of the lucky ones to be one of the last ones to fall asleep. Samuel doesn't want to get in her way, so he stays in the other room. He doesn't know that the experts are watching the area from outside his house. Everyone who is awake has been asked to leave the island, so he is afraid that if he is found, he will be punished. The next day, Samuel has a dream that he runs into Stella at the food store, but she doesn't pay much attention to him. When he calls her by name, she asks him how he knows it. This jolts him out of his sleep. Samuel starts a new adventure every morning as he talks to Stella while she sleeps and listens to the news on the radio. People all over the world are talking about the pandemic, and strange arguments are starting to pop up. Samuel laughs at them and decides to go explore the island during the day. The first person he sees is a worker who is sleeping while stuck to a tree. He also finds out that the island's animals are still alive, which makes him wonder who is taking care of them. After walking for about an hour, he gets to the church, where a lot of people are asleep. Samuel takes a few shots, then sits down and falls asleep. In his dream, he and Stella are at a diner, sitting across from each other. They talk about Samuel and what he is doing on the island as if they have known each other forever. Stella doesn't like that he's using the situation to make money, but Samuel says he's there for the experience, not for the money. He goes through Stella's things to find her daily journal when he gets back home later. As he reads it, he feels closer to Stella and keeps having dreams about her. She tells him in the dream that she was one of the last people to be hit. Her piano teacher was the first person she saw pass out. He fell asleep in the middle of class. Stella says she was more confused than scared when asked if she was scared. Doctors and experts went there, but all they found was that the people shouldn't be moved from where they fell asleep. Stella thinks it's funny that if she gets out of bed, her heart might burst. Samuel then asks her how she felt right before she went to sleep. Stella says it was like being in a dream. She had strange, lively dreams, and she got so caught up in them that she fell asleep without realizing it. The next day, Samuel goes on another adventure. This time, he goes to a different neighborhood, where he sees a car full of balloons. While trying to take a picture of it, he sees health workers close and has to run back home. Samuel is brought back to reality by the event, and he chooses to leave the island because he has taken enough pictures. He says goodbye to Stella, packs up his things, and goes to where his boat is on the shore. But after he looks at the boat for a long time from the beach, he changes his mind. When he gets home, the tap is already running. Samuel remembers that it was on when he first walked into the house, but he is sure he turned it off. He is suddenly taken back to his dream, where he is sitting next to Stella at the restaurant. She asks him what his real reason was for coming to the island. Samuel tells her at last that he came here because of her. He was on vacation on the island a year ago when he ran into Stella at the grocery shop. Later that day, he followed her to a restaurant. There, she seemed young and free, which caught his attention. But the night was over before he could ask her for her number, and he never saw her again. Back in the real world, Samuel goes to the grocery store to buy food. At the same time, two researchers come in to buy booze. Samuel gets hit by one of them, but he doesn't get caught because he acts like he's out. After they leave, he is happy to go shopping for groceries and even pays the checker who is sleeping before he brings the groceries home. After that, he wanders around Stella's house, looking at her things and making up stories about who she is. When he finds a tape player in the attic with a list of her favorite things on it, he hits the jackpot. Random things like the sound of a typewriter, Barbie dolls without heads, and flamingo floaties are on the list, but the more Samuel listens to it, the more he likes her. Stella says on the list that her favorite thing to do is drive on the beach. So, Samuel imagines that he and Stella are outside looking for a car so they can drive to the beach. He doesn't like the idea of taking from people who are sleeping, but Stella talks him into thinking that they are just borrowing the money. Soon, they find a car they like and break into the owner's house to look for the keys. Samuel likes how free-spirited Stella is, and he starts to think she isn't just in his head. A while later, he wakes up to the sound of a car outside and sees two health workers coming into the house for a weekly checkup. He quickly grabs all of his things and hides in a closet for a few seconds until he is found. The workers look at Stella to see if anything is wrong and then leave soon after. Samuel spends the rest of the day talking to Stella while he lies down next to her bed. He goes to the attic again the next day and plays the second half of her tape. This time, she talks about the things she hates and says she feels lonely and weak. Samuel wants to help her feel better, but he doesn't know what to do. This makes him feel powerless. Again, he gets lost in his thoughts and starts talking to her. The two talk about how everyone has a partner. Samuel says that they might be soulmates, but Stella doesn't agree. Now that Samuel is back in the real world, he chooses to go home since he no longer has a reason to be on the island. He gets halfway to the dock, but he just can't leave Stella. When he gets home at night, he smokes Stella's stash and dreams that they are smoking together. From that day on, he makes it his goal to do everything Stella put on her list of things she loved. For the same reason, he makes spaghetti and drinks beer out of a wine glass. When he's drunk, Stella shows up in his dreams, angry that he won't leave her alone. She says that the Stella he knows from reading her papers and listening to her tapes is not her. Samuel knows she's right, since he's never actually talked to her and their friendship is all in his head. As he tries to convince himself that coming to the island wasn't a mistake, Stella tells him to leave her alone and then disappears into the darkness. In the next scene, Samuel chooses to leave again, but this time his trip is different. On the way, he is very thirsty and starts to see strange things. He breaks into a flat to drink, but the more he drinks, the more thirsty he gets. When the walls start to close in on him, he gets scared and realizes he's about to fall asleep like everyone else. As he tries to stay awake, Stella, who doesn't exist, calls him and tells him to go home. He wakes up all of a sudden and runs back to her house, saying that if he has to fall asleep, he would rather do it near her. Samuel is shocked when he wakes up the next morning. But he doesn't know how long he can stay awake. Whenever he has a chance, he writes Stella notes in case she ever gets to read them. It takes him the whole day, and when he's done, he also falls asleep. A few days go by, and Stella starts to move in her sleep. When she wakes up after being asleep for more than a week, everything changes. She realizes she is tired and goes to the wash basin to get a drink of water. When she sees a second toothbrush on the table, she thinks that someone else has been living with her. Stella is more confused than scared as she slowly moves towards a sleeping Samuel in the living room. She tries to wake him up a few times but gives up. The house is full of random things she likes, like a Barbie without her head and a big flamingo floaty. Stella is happy to see them, but her happiness goes away when she finds out that Samuel has been reading her writings and listening to her tapes. In a fit of anger, she hits him several times and finds the notes he wrote for her. In it, he tells her he's sorry he listened to her tapes and that she's just like everyone else. He tells her that it's okay to feel lonely and build up a defense, but he wants her to be herself. Stella is shocked by the notes when she realizes that the stranger in her house knows everything about her. She also feels like she has known him for a long time. Over the next few days, she has a few dreams that include Samuel. As he did in his dreams, they talk about his likes, dislikes, fears, and duties. Stella knows they are linked even though they have never met in person. So, she takes care of him the way he took care of her. The next morning, Stella wakes up later than normal and finds a nice surprise waiting for her. Samuel is no longer sleeping on the couch. The two meet for the first time in the kitchen, but it feels like they've known each other for years. Samuel says his name and shakes her hand. He's happy to see that she's just as happy to meet him. In the last scene, we go back to the bus where everything began. The woman whose goldfish Samuel stole wakes up, and we can see that she is now holding two fish instead of one.